Hey guys, this is the Gale Bradley 2, and this video is going to be about the model, disregarding steel as much as possible because I've already talked about the steel. First things first, how does it carry? It carries like a normal pocket knife. This one doesn't. I've tested and reviewed the Caribbean before the Gale Bradley, and this one, as you can see, is much wider. And when I put the Gale Bradley 2 in my pocket, I realized, wow, this carries excellent. It just carries like a normal pocket knife. Okay. Now, it does come with a standard Spyderco pocket clip, just like similar to the one on the Stretch 2. And this will leave the knife hanging out of your pocket this much. When I had that pocket clip, I used to carry the knife inside my pocket. Also, for this model, that is not the most comfortable option. So I put a no-name brand deep carry pocket clip, which I've bent according to my own needs. As you can see, it doesn't stand out too much from the scale, neither here or this tab. This makes it getting it inside your pocket, clipped to your pocket, a bit more difficult, especially if you're carrying thick jeans. But the trade-off is it feels much better in hand, much better than the standard Spyderco pocket clip. So that was an improvement. Now, whenever you looking for the Gale Bradley or the Gale Bradley 2 model, you're going to hear two things. There is no significant cutout for the liner lock, and it has proud liners. I have no issues with the lack of a cutout for a liner lock. I can disengage the knife quite comfortably with my thumb, even my right thumb, with my index finger, or with my left thumb. This goes just very easy. So if you don't have a messed up right thumb like I do, I don't think you're gonna have issues. Even if you're a lefty, this goes very easily. It also works with gloves. Now, I consider this a working knife, and with gloves, it does become very stable in hand. It is also without them, but with gloves, this knife feels great in hand. Now, you can open the knife without any issues one-handed, and you can close it with heavier gloves. I have two pairs, just a thin synthetic glove and a very used up leather glove on the inside, and you can unlock the liner. Maybe the safest option would be to do it two-handed, so you don't close it on your thumb. See, I did that. But it can be done. The hole is not the biggest one, like with the Stretch 2, but it works. I really had no issues with it. And like I said, I mean, with gloves, this does feel like a very solid fixed blade. Had no issues with it. The proud liners, a lot of people will say they're uncomfortable. Doing everyday carry knife tasks with it, it's not really uncomfortable. If you're just gonna pick up a stick and do a few cuts, it's gonna be okay. I mean, you don't squeeze the knife that hard in your hand. You use these two fingers to grip onto the knife, these two for control mainly, and just few slice cuts. You don't even feel those proud liners. But once you start doing more than a few cuts, 50, 100, 200, 300, and once the temperature drops, right now it's very warm, but once the temperature drops and your hands get a bit dry and cold, you're gonna feel those proud liners. Now guys, you know my opinion about jimping. If it's there, it shouldn't bother you. And this jimping really doesn't bother me. It's good for indexing. You know where you are. I've tried cutting like this and the jimping didn't bother me. But this would be the position that I would use whenever I need to remove wood. And I don't feel the jimping as I would, for example, with the Stretch 2 if I want to choke up on it. Now here, the jimping bothers me. And this one is way more aggressive. Here, the jimping doesn't bother me, but if I choke up on it, I will feel the corners of these proud liners. So I understand how some people feel the need to get custom micarta or G10 handle scales to make those liners flush. it would be way more comfortable. It is, and it does bother me. It's not that big of an issue that I need to do something about it. This is a great model. I wouldn't have carried it for 3.5, 4 months if it wouldn't be, and if I wouldn't have liked the knife just out of sheer willpower to prove that it's not good. No, I like it. But these proud liners are more for aesthetic reasons than actually doing anything. One more thing. When you're going to cut, like I said, you're going to use these two fingers to hold on to the knife. And these two fingers can be a bit looser. And you'll see what I'm trying to say right here, because whenever you're cutting something, you get, let's say you get a very deep cut, you're gonna have this pivot point right here, and the knife is going to be pushed into your pinky and ring finger. And you're gonna do that cut over and over and over again. 50 cuts, let's say you have to cut through pieces of wood, let's say you have to cut through cardboard. This is always gonna be a point of contact. And this is where you see the most damage from those proud liners. See right here, after 10 days of really intense usage of this knife, you can already see calluses forming here and here, and less here and here. That is from these proud liners. After I did, I don't know, a few hundred cuts with this, I picked up the Caribbean. And this one has these grooves right here, you can see them. Just a few cuts. I'm not squeezing the knife that hard, but I'm squeezing it in my hand. And you're gonna see those grooves on my fingers. However, it feels way more comfortable. So doing 50 cuts with the Caribbean, 50 cuts with Gail Bradley, this one's gonna feel more comfortable. Simply because it doesn't have proud liners. And okay, it does have another shape to the handle. And if you're gonna use this, I mentioned this in the video about the Caribbean, if you're gonna cut wood and actually angle your blade at 45 degrees, use a nice slicing motion, this knife will be locked in your hand. And here I also feel my fingers going in between the scales, but the discomfort is way less than with the Gail Bradley 2. And as soon as you're going to get a folder to do your cutting tasks, you are making that sacrifice. Because if you want to have the most comfort for just whittling hard woods, this is an old axe handle, I just whittled away at it. If you're going to just get a Mora 106, that's going to be most comfortable. Folders are always going to have hot spots, and this one, for it, those design proud liners, well, they make the knife less comfortable. However, it's not that bad. Just consider knives like the ZT-0561, which are a nightmare to work with. 20 cuts inside of something like this, an axe handle, you're gonna hate the knife, hate your life, hate everything else, unless you wear gloves. And like I said, with gloves, this knife just becomes fantastic. You get a very good grip on it. The handle is large enough and just feels so good doing the work. Now it feels very good doing the work also because it has a nice hollow ground blade. There's a right way to do hollow ground blades and a not so right way to do them, and a very wrong way to do them. This one's done okay. To my surprise, the Elementum, after doing, I don't know how many cuts with this, I picked up the Elementum, it was in my pocket, it's still a bit dirty from, I don't know, about a week ago. So, D2 did not rust from sap. Shocking. And it went through a bit easier. Now, this is 15 degrees per side. This is about 13.5, but this is a smaller knife. Everybody likes to give flack to talk smack about Civivi, but I think Civivi do very good grinds on their knives, very thin, and they put out a good product. So this one's done well. It is slightly thinner here, but it's not too thin. If you would make a hollow ground blade too thin, you could end up getting damage inside the blade. So if you would thin it out much more here, especially if you are to introduce shock, maybe you want to chop through something. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, but hey, for testing purposes, you could. And if the lateral forces become too great, you could not damage the edge, the apex, the edge, but the actual grind, and that would compromise your blade. This one's done right. Now I did do maybe a few chops in it, in wood with it, but I didn't do stuff which I did with the 4MAX Scout, because this is not that sort of knife. Hollow ground blade, well done. Could it be better? In my opinion, it could be. It could be a bit thinner. Now, this is not just a knife that anybody will buy, and M4 is praised for its toughness and how well it withstands shock, being used in competitions and everything. So it could have a slightly thinner grind. I would like that. It is okay for what it is. After I'm done with the videos about the knife and maybe testing it a bit more, I will probably reduce the edge angle further. What I did like about the knife, I'm not a fan of swedges, but this one does work, and the spine of the knife is very well rounded. That I liked very much. Now, they did put some thought into it, and you see this portion of the blade is not sharpened. This is so that if you disengage it, an unsharpened portion of the blade will hit your finger, not the sharpened one. For the tenacious, you have to go really high at the liner lock to not hit your thumb with the sharpened portion of the blade. And this one, yeah, you also go very high. See, not an issue. Better, better made than the tenacious anyway. But there is something to be said about having the blade sharpened all the way to the handle. It just gives you the most amount of control right here if you have to do very fine push cuts. You also have that with the Gale Bradley too, but I found myself that right here, you can see the wood splits, the wood splinters, the wood will just gunk up inside. Not an issue, something you maybe want to be aware of. All in all, I think the design is pretty nice. Now let's talk about the cutting edge profile. This is something that I noticed in testing these 4 Spydercos. And usually it was in this order. I used to cut with the Gale Bradley, then pick up the Caribbean, then maybe these 2 reversed, who knows. Now, it does have a small distal taper right here. You see that? And it could be comparable with the one on the Caribbean, which is not as drastic as the one on the Stretch 2. Whenever Spyderco uses a steel like K390 or M4, what I noticed is they do put a thinner grind behind the edge. That is also true for the Para 2 and Cruwear. Unfortunately for these 2 knives, the grinds are uneven. For these 2, they are decent, symmetrical enough. Now, if you're going to also use the tip and want to do some control cuts, it will put your wrist in a slightly awkward position. It's a good grind, it's thin enough, with a low enough edge angle, it's okay. And this knife came with about a 16-17 degree per side edge angle. I reduced it to 15. That is okay. With the hollow ground blade, it works. Okay, but it does put your hand in a slightly weird position. Maybe it's the handle, maybe it's the cutting edge profile. Now, if you're going to use this, you might tilt your wrist in the same angle to your forearm, but it feels much more comfortable. And of course, this is true for the Para 2. It just feels very nice, very controlled, much more so than the Bradley 2. This feels a bit forced. It's a small detail, but I kept noticing it. It kept coming up while I did it. Now, when you're talking about the Stretch 2, this is just fantastic. I think the way they, even though these blades look the same, this one has a bit more belly and is slightly angled more downward. When you hold the knife like this belly will be angled more downward than the one on the Para 2. And this one just does excellent for fine work. So you don't have to angle your wrist so much, your fist towards your in relation to your forearm, and it'll just, the distal taper is also more extreme. It'll give you control and not put your hand in a very awkward position. So that is one thing that I noticed. However, this does feel very stable in hand. The whole okay, and it does look kind of cool, I have to admit. I'm not a big fan of wedges, but in this case, the way it was ground does look very, very cool, and it does feel stable in hand. So, and when you have to use your thumb for support, let's say you have to do some intricate carving here, like I said, the spine is nice and rounded, so it doesn't bother you. With the Caribbean, it's also, the edges are also knocked off, but with this one, with the Stretch, they aren't really sharp, but they will bother you more. And the same thing with the Para 2. So this, I would call it more of a gentleman's heavy-duty work knife. It just feels very solid. It gets the job done, and in case you have to do a lot of work with it, it won't let you down, except for those proud liners. And for it having such a great overall design, it is really a shame that they did something just simply for aesthetics. They don't bother me as much that I would feel the need to change it. Some people complained about the carbon fiber G10 handle scales. I have the Sage 1 and the Burke 75 from the same, probably, Taiwan Taichung factory, and I've never felt them lacking. I feel them grippy enough. The texture is really pleasant, and in your hand, especially when you're doing a lot of cuts, the same cut, the same motion. This pattern of carbon fiber can be very comfortable. Plus, it looks really cool. So, yeah, not really an issue for me, but it might be for you. I've seen a lot of people get micarta handle scales, and I understand how they would make sense. For me, the knife looks fantastic the way it does, and it does a decent enough job. Like I said, I wouldn't have spent 3.5-4 months with this knife in my pocket, using it as much as I did, simply out of spite to be able to say it's no good or these proud liners are uncomfortable. No, I can live with it, and I've actually enjoyed testing this knife. I'm going to enjoy it even more, reducing the edge angle, because I think 15 degrees per side is good. Below that, 13, 12, even better. It gives you a lot more cutting ability, and all the tasks will just become more pleasant. Now, the knife works. Forward hammer grip, in the chest lever grip, as opposed to all the other knives here, the Caribbean, the Stretch 2, the Para 2, they don't sit as well in the chest lever grip. And this is a grip where you might actually need or want to use your thumb on the spine like this for control, or you might actually want to put a lot of pressure behind the cut. And this knife does it very well. That's where you actually take advantage of the rounded spine and the way the handle is built. Now, when you do a lot of cuts, also in this position, you will start feeling the way it digs into your hand. And like I said, whenever you're using a folder, you're gonna have to make that trade-off. It's not more a 106. It is a folder. It's gonna have its hot spots. But as a working knife, like I said, I liked it. Maybe it's not a beginner knife, but if you get this and you get accustomed to taking care of the steel, sharpening it, it would teach you some valuable lessons. It is very smooth. I mean, I haven't cleaned the knife. I haven't disassembled the knife for over a month, and just disengaging the liner lock, the blade falls freely. The detent is not the hardest. Same with the Sage 1 and with the Burke 75. You can flick it out of the handle. That's how they make the detents, as far as I've seen in the Taiwan Taichung factory. The detent with this Para 2 is slightly weaker. But here you have the compression lock. This is a much more fidgetable knife. Here you also, comparing these two knives and comparing the Para 2 with many other knives, if you're gonna do a test like I did here, try to cut same material with all the portions of the blade in more than one way, you're gonna see very quickly why this is one of Spyderco's most popular models. But this one does have that certain I don't know what, and I liked it. I wouldn't get custom scales unless I get a really good deal on them. But yeah, if I wouldn't have other knives to test and I would just have to stick with this one in my pocket for the rest of my life, the only drawback I would consider would be the steel. It is a carbon steel, and with time it will rust. I would definitely like to see this knife with a different steel, just for the heck of it. Some very, very exotic stainless steel. Yeah, I would much rather test it in this model than how they do it. They always put exotic steels with the Para 2 model. But yeah, so guys, these were my thoughts on the Bradley 2 model. I tried to cover all the points, all the bases. If I failed to mention something, please let me know and I will try to answer it, or if need be, make another video about it. Also, when I tested the Stretch 2 K390, I didn't compare as many knives. In this case, I compared a lot of knives while using this knife, and some were a real surprise, and you'll get to hear about that. And some were well, this one, which I didn't think twice about it, but after using it in combination with this was a back pocket knife, this was my main knife, it did open my eyes to a few things. So overall, I've really enjoyed my experience with the Gale Bradley 2, and I will probably do the same thing with it, which I did with the Stretch 2, lower the edge angle and keep working with it. If you have any questions, if I failed to mention something, let me know. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you heard things that you didn't hear in other places. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.